How do you do? Jen and Cam feel it would be unkind to present this program without a friendly word of warning. We are about to unfold our true crime podcast, a podcast of lifelong friends who seek to examine crimes which were committed without reckoning upon God. The discussion will be frank, and the subject matter will be of a grim and violent nature. I think it will thrill you. It might even horrify you. So, if there are young children listening, or if you feel unwilling to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to, well, we've warned you.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Cam. How are you?
Oh, you know, I'm here.
Living the dream each and every week.
I tell you what, I don't know. Here's my plate. You know, everybody's got a little plate. And then I got more like a giant banquet table of stuff.
Yep.
In my world right now. So whatever, but that's okay.
Piling on.
Whatever.
That's okay.
Just keeps going. Just keeps going.
It's all in a circle. It's going to be upswing soon, right? Just an upswing. You just got to keep hoping. It's gonna upswing. Everything's gonna get better. It always does.
I think I fell off the swing, and I got my knees are all skinned up, and I need stitches. That's how I feel. But whatever.
There's always alcohol. It's always there when you need
That's right,
it.
buddy. Mm-hmm. It's your best friend.
It's your best friend. Never
what's going on, Jen?
Exciting week. Cracked my tooth. Thought I was gonna have to get a root canal, but even better, I had to get the sucker yanked out of my head, which is always fun.
Is it the one right in front? Because that would make me happy.
No, it's a molar. It's a molar. You got something for us this week?
I do. I have a rather bizarre, I guess, case. A rather interesting case. It's got a couple of twists and turns and a little like, okay, it's something. You ready?
Good. Yeah, let's hear it.
Here we go, Jen. Put on your seatbelt. You're going to need it. Maybe.
Awesome.
Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe the park's closed. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, you ready? So today, we're going to go back in time where things were, a little bit more simple. There was no internet or cable TV, and children, like we did, played outside unsupervised until the street lamps came on, and that was their sign to go inside or go check in with mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. Or when your mom stands out in the front porch and yells your name over and over. Mm-hmm.
Oh, those times are gone, let me tell you. Everyone went to church on Sundays and their Sunday best, and the American dream was to get married to your true love, own a house with 2.5 kids. The year is 1960, and we're going to pay a visit to Macon, Georgia. And while a lot has changed over the past 60 years, some things never change, like greed, lust, and murder.
Ooh.
Chester and Mary Burge lived a very comfortable lifestyle in an immaculate house on the ritzy side of East Macon in a neighborhood called Shirley Hills.
Ooh.
The couple had worked hard to collect land, sit on it for a bit, and sell it for profit. Now, sometimes you'd call that like land flipping, or sometimes you'd call that slumlording, whichever, if you're going to kind of rip people off as you do it. But we'll get to that. Now, it may have taken some time, but they were doing better than just all right. By all those that knew them, they were very well off in the money department. Chester was in Macon Hospital as he had just had surgery on a hernia a few days earlier, and he was on the mend. As Chester was listening to the radio, a breaking news story would shatter his life as he knew it. It was May 12th, 1960. The announcer broke in to say that Mary Burge of 1011 Nottingham Drive was just discovered in her bed dead. And from the looks of it, foul play was definitely at work. Mary had been violently attacked in her home, and she was in bed. Chester jumped up, and he was like, I'm out of here. He jumped up, got out of that hospital, and he went home to arrive at the scene still wearing his hospital gear, hospital robe, I guess. It seems that the family maid, Jessie May, had found the body, and authorities made some calls to family and friends, including their one and only child, John, but forgot to actually call her husband, who was at the hospital and tell him that Mary had died. So that's how he heard that his beloved wife died. Could you imagine?
Horrible.
Chester and Mary got married in 1924. Mary, who had 9 siblings, had grown up on a farm nearby and was not raised like those the couple now surrounded themselves around in 1960. Chester also came from very humble beginnings, but as the son of a plumber, he had ambition and wanted better. He wanted a extravagant lifestyle. He wanted to be known. So Chester and Mary were a bit of, I guess, they were the nouveau riche, as we would call them, right? Mm-hmm. So they came around. They were kind of known to be a little bit of an odd couple, a strange couple around town. They didn't act like those who had grown up with money all their life. And while they were a bit flashy, or bougie, as you like to say, they liked to throw big, expensive parties where everyone who is anyone would be invited. The house had all the finer things that anybody could ever want. It had beautiful monogram china. It had grand portraits hung out throughout the mansion walls. But they weren't relatives of either of Chester or Mary. And guess what? Those monograms, they weren't even their initials. So they would just buy the stuff, I guess. They were putting on a show.
They were pretenders or posers.
There you go. They presented a fabulous facade of being the rich couple who had it all, even though part of it, or most of it, was borrowed from others. As police are investigating the death, they note ligature marks around Mary's neck and facial bruising. An autopsy would reveal that her time of death was around midnight the previous night, and her cause of death was due to strangulation. What was glaringly absent was the huge 10-carat diamond ring that she was oh so proud of and would flash around to anyone within a mile radius. Strangely, though, the ring was still on her finger, but it was the diamond that had been removed from the setting.
That's smart. That's how you can't get caught with the... Yep.
I suppose. The carpet next to her bed had bloodstains on it, leading police to believe that she was most likely killed there, and then someone had actually placed her in her bed, like she was killed not on her bed, and then placed in her bed. A closet door that had always been locked appeared to have been tampered with, as if someone had tried to get into it. Officers were able to lift a few fingerprints off the frame of the closet door from the outside, by the way. Officers began to do what they do. They questioned those around Mary, starting with the small circle and working their way out. The maid, Jessie May, was the first one to find Mary as she went up to wake her up for the day, opening the curtains. Good morning, Mary. Miss Mary, you got to get up, whatever. Jessie May tells officers no one strange had been around the house lately, but that Mary's prized parrot had died the day before, and Mary was beside herself about the death of her little bird. Jessie mentions that the bird squawked any time someone came in, sort of like an alarm system, if you will. Mm-hmm. So if a person came in, it would automatically start talking. As officers press Jessie May reveals another little tidbit of information. It seems that just 2 weeks ago, prior to her passing away sometime overnight, the KKK, led by their leader, Robert Lee Davidson, paid a visit to their home. It seems, unlike many in the South at the time, Chester didn't see any difference in skin color as long as that person came with the color green. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
money.
Little cash. Greasing of the palms.
That's right. This upset the KKK fellas because Chester rented a house to a black man in a white neighborhood. Chester was not one to back down. And to him, business was business and money was money. And if you had the money to rent, hey, fine by me. And so he'd rent to you, which I think is very cool from 1960 in Macon, Georgia. I think that's pretty progressive. KKK didn't like it, of course. At this point, they're kind of thinking maybe the KKK had something to do with this. Police then question Chester, who tells the officers that the closet holds all of their valuables, so it would make sense that maybe somebody tried to break in it. Chester looks around and confirms that all their fancy stuff was still in there, but then he asks officers about the wallet under the bed, where they kept, spare change. Officers retrieve it to find it was empty except for one single dollar bill. Quite upset, Chester tells them that the money's missing. All that money is missing. The couple kept $5,000 in it, which would be equal to about $43,000 in cash today. Yeah, that's their petty cash underneath their bed, right?
Oh, well, that's kind of low. Don't you keep your petty cash? I mean, we have more
always.
than that under our bed.
75 at least.
Yeah.
So it's looking more and more like the motive might have been robbery, and, the robbery just didn't go quite as planned. That motive became questionable as one of the investigators noticed something sparkling under a window. As he ventures over to look at it and he picks it up, he knew exactly what it was. It was the missing 10-carat diamond. They're believing that during the toss, the fight, the tussle,
Right, he lost the diamond.
Was just right. The hospital is called, and they do, in fact, confirm that Chester was in the hospital the previous night. Now that police have kind of figured out the ring, the diamond has been collected, they need to start thinking of something else. So they begin to work on that tip that Jesse May had given them, and they ventured down to pay a visit to Mr. Robert Lee Davidson, the Grand Dragon of the KKK. Now, Davidson told them they were upset that Chester rented to black folks, but, they were looking in the wrong direction. They did not have anything to do with it. They need to go down and talk to those renters, as he was sure it was one of them that killed Mary. After all, Chester was not exactly really nice to many of them. Chester had made his fortune buying and selling land, as I said earlier, as well as making loans to these people. Now, the thing with Chester, and this is a little bit tough, I guess, sort of like 1960s loan, the dollar loan places, you know what I'm saying, with the 150% interest. He was kind of like that.
It's called legalized theft, but okay.
It is. So Chester would make a loan to these people, and he just had a little clause in there, at the bottom, just little tiny thing in print in the loan contract. And it was a clause that many of the folks that he rented property to didn't quite understand. And it was called a reversionary clause. This itty-bitty fine print meant that if a tenant missed a payment, even late by 1 day, the property went straight back to Chester. Chester would get the property free and clear, even if the person had been paying on it for years, right? So it was sort of like a rent to own, but the minute that's where he would get them, the minute they
swoop in,
missed a payment, it goes back to him. The tenants would get nothing but an eviction notice, and of course, they'd have a little anger. You can't blame them.
Legal but unethical.
Yes. The people who ended up losing their house to Chester all decided to file a lawsuit against him. Now, police are starting to wonder if maybe this could be the reason, and maybe someone was actually mad enough to kill Mary over this. All of these people are gathered up and they're brought into the police station for questioning. Police bring them in on what was then called open charges, which basically means police needs to talk to you, and they don't really have anything to charge you with, so the police made it up. 1960. You gotta love 1960. We're gonna arrest you on open charges. And they're like, what? Because I wouldn't know what that meant either.
I wouldn't
be like, what do I do? Right?
Well, you're taught to trust the police and what they say,
Right, totally.
Especially back in the 60s when everybody was not clued into what was really going on.
Exactly.
Or so it seems, I should say.
Yeah.
Since that was way before I was born.
Way before you were born. The group of people tell officers how evil Chester is and how he basically stole back what they had purchased from him. Officers wonder if Chester was the one who was supposed to be killed and somehow Mary got it instead. Now, there's nothing to prove this theory at this point, but, that's what they're thinking. And, because they can't hold him on, quote, open charges, unquote, they have to let all the people go home. So that's the idea that they're working on at this moment.
Okay.
A week passes and the results are back on the fingerprints they lifted from the closet door. Sadly, and not altogether surprisingly, the fingerprints were Chester's. And seeing how he lives there, he uses the closet, and so they have nothing. With nothing to go on, officers go back to the beginning as they need to come up with some new strategy, theory, or whatever. And what they come up with is that they think, at this point, it had to be some sort of inside job. And with that, they arrest the one who found Mary that morning, Jessie May, the maid. They also arrest Lewis Johnson, the chauffeur. Both were black. What did they have to arrest them for? Nothing. But okay.
Skin color?
1960. So they bring Jessie and Lewis in, And it seems both Jessie May and Lewis have a small criminal background, but that's not all they have going on, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that after Lewis went home to his wife around 10 p.m. that night, he slipped out of bed around midnight and he went to go pay a little visit on Jessie May. And the two, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hubba, hubba. Those two remained in bed until the morning. So that's where he was. Even though both Jessie May and Lewis's stories were the same, police still continued to press them. They weren't happy with that. They needed more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before too long, Jessie May reveals a little bit of a backstory. And it's something like this. It seems that Chester had a friend, and he and the friend had developed quite an eye for each other.
Oh.
And Mary was less than thrilled about this. Always a frequent guest at their lavish parties, people began to notice and started to whisper quietly about it.
Was this a male friend?
Rich people like to gossip too, Jen. They just do it with more money.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It didn't take too long for police to track down the apple of old Chester's eye, but it did require a plane trip to New Jersey. As police knock on the door, they are greeted by Chester's frequent party companion, and now slowly becoming the number one suspect, Mr. Fritz Phillips.
Wow. Dun, dun, dun.
Fritz.
So he was a little...
He's in the closet, too,
men.
apparently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fritz tells officers that he met Chester through one of his relatives who also dabbled in real estate. Chester and Mary came to New Jersey to do some business there, and when they finished, his relative asked if Fritz would mind driving Chester and Mary back to Macon. Now, this is where I think I did the time, because I was like, that's not a favor. Like, hey, Jen, can you run my kid across town? This is like, it's over a 13-hour drive. What?
Yeah.
Like, that's a favor, right? Just a little weird. You wonder why people do
That's
stuff,
more
right?
than a favor. Yeah.
Thank you. Fritz was a well-educated rich kid, and Chester was in lust. In fact...
Was he young?
Yes. Ready? This is a doozy. I swear, people kill me. They slay me. In fact, that long 13-hour drive must have flown by quickly, because the two of them would perform oral sex on each other in the car as Mary was sleeping in the back.
Wow. Okay.
What?
Poor Mary.
Okay, poor Mary. After this, the pair were inseparable. Chester would fly Fritz to Macon for visits, and let's say Fritz did not stay in the guest room of the mansion. It was common that married couples back in 1960 who could afford to have separate bedrooms would often do so. That was sort of a way to be like, look how rich we are. We even get our own bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And, back in 1960, you very may well have, a 2-bedroom house.
That
one for you and one for the kids.
That would kind of be dreamy, though, to be honest, to have separate bedrooms.
You sleep better. I'll tell you that. Officers are so blown away by all of this that Fritz is telling them, they're just like shocked, right? Fritz was very out and non-apologetic about the type of relationship he and Chester were having. And this was a bit out of the norm for these very Southern police officers who I'm sure were sitting there with their mouths on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Macon, Georgia, 1960. Obviously, Mary knew more than anyone could have imagined about the relationship between Chester and his young boy toy. Fritz said that Mary and he were cordial, and if it bothered her, well, she never really let on. It seems like not only did Mary know about this, she was actually okay with it as long as they kept it very hush-hush. Because, money.
Exactly.
Get a divorce.
Well, and money. I'm assuming, too, it would be scandalous just to get a divorce, much less if your husband was cheating on you because he had a male lover. I mean, it would be devastating.
So, yeah, and in the circles that Mary and Chester, ran around with, one could not be divorced, as that would never look good to the outside world. And in order to keep their social standing in the community, Mary needed to look the other way. Mary had long known that Chester really liked men, and she believed dalliances had occurred, but that when he was out of town and it wasn't right in front of her and all the highfalutin society friends of hers and in Macon, Georgia, she was okay with it, right? Out of sight, out of mind. Well, Chester's great affection, I guess, / lust for Fritz had changed that, and people began to notice. So when police suggested that Fritz killed Mary because he wanted Chester all to himself, the officers were greeted with a huge laugh from Fritz. Fritz informs them that Chester was just something fun to do, and well, Chester had loves all over. And to find out names, they need to talk to Chester's chauffeur, Lewis. The very Lewis that they spoke to earlier, with Jessie May.
Yeah.
But Lewis never revealed that information to them, that he knew that, Chester, that might be something you want to know, right? That the husband of the murdered woman is having affairs.
Yeah,
all over the place.
I mean, that's a pretty big thing to need to know, I would assume so, yes.
So I do have to say that, I just imagine these two Southern cops from 1960 getting, this had to be like a bad soap opera before there was ever soap opera. Well, actually be a really good soap opera. You know what I'm saying? And they're probably, just getting an earful, and I'm sure they're like, what? Say what? And then, kept going. So the police bring Lewis back into the station, and Lewis tells them a shocking story. It seems Chester had his eyes on a new man, or really, a boy in high school. Ew. The kid worked at the local service station Chester used, and the boy, well, he had a target on his back. Chester decided he wanted this young kid so much, he went to the boy's parents and told them how he was going to take him on an all-expense-paid trip to Europe. And you know what? He would even pay for the boy to go. He wanted the boy to get an education, you see, in Europe with him.
What kind of education?
Exactly. What do you think? So when Mary heard about this, she was furious. This was a teenager. He was like 17-ish, 17, 16, 17, somewhere in there. He was not a man yet. And this was right here in town in front of all these people they knew, all these gossiping rich people, right?
Right.
Mary knew that if people found this out, they would be ruined forever, and society would never let them back into their high, rich worlds, right? This, not his affairs, was the very worst thing that could have happened in Mary's world. For once, Mary puts her foot down and demands it ends right now. Stop. You cannot seduce this kid, basically. You can't be a pedophile. So now police begin to theorize that Chester did not want to let this one boy get away, and that maybe he killed Mary in a fit of rage. I'm telling you, twist turns were like on a racetrack. At this time, Chester was back in the hospital, still recovering from that surgery he had had earlier. Right after he had ran over to his house and the police questioned him, he, of course, went back to the hospital to continue to recover, which I kind of think is weird too, but whatever. Officers head over to the hospital to talk to him. While they're there, they question the nurse who was on duty the night Mary was killed. She confirms that Chester was, in fact, in the hospital bed all night long, and before he went to sleep, she gave him some painkillers and sleeping meds. She does tell them, however, she was there all night except for a small break when there was a shift change. Oh, and she also mentioned seeing two men come into the hospital, and it was after visiting hours. The nurse claimed she couldn't really identify the men, but one of the men was black and one was white. Now, while that tidbit of info is a little bit helpful, police are still left scratching their heads because did he hire somebody? He's obviously in the hospital. Plus, he had painkillers that would have knocked him out. So they're more confused than ever, right?
Right.
Police put their heads together and they figure out what they need is a plan to get Chester to fess up. A plan that would make Chester weak and cave. A plan, or rather, a person. Enter Fritz. Police decide to fly Fritz in, and they ask him to help them with the investigation. Fritz not only agrees, but says as of late, he's become a bit concerned with Chester, and if he was involved in the murder of Mary, he's more than happy to help, right?
More than happy.
More than happy. It seems that several weeks back, Chester and Fritz were together, and Chester told Fritz a little story when they were driving to Florida to look at some property. Chester tells Fritz that he is madly in love with him, and that he, Chester, is going to buy a small hotel in Florida, and Fritz is going to run it for him. Chester's coming along as he plans to leave Mary. Well, Fritz may be young, but he's not stupid, and he knows Mary would never agree to this. So when Chester and Fritz return from Florida, they're met with a very upset Mary. Mary demands that the love affair must end, but that's not all. She tells Chester that she has arranged for him to see a doctor to cure him of his gayness, and he will be getting a procedure that will help him and cure him of the sick illness. And it's called a lobotomy.
Oh, nice. That kind of cures everything.
Really, everything.
It does.
Except for then you're going to need diapers for the rest of your life, but okay. Chester, of course, is like, no freaking way. No. Nope. And yeah, I got to be honest, I'm with Chester on that one. No way. So both Chester and Fritz go and see the doctor, who thankfully said a lobotomy would not work, but what would work was for Fritz to simply go away. Fritz is like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Because honestly, Chester was just something I did, literally, to pass the time.
Exactly. Unless he was after the money. But... Right?
He was raised a rich kid. He was a rich kid anyway. While it was easy for Fritz to walk away, Chester was not finding it near as easy. Chester is pissed. Police wonder, and they keep digging in on Chester. Now, while it's obvious Chester has one foot in this world and one in another closet, it turns out there are quite a few skeletons in that closet with him. Police uncover some documents regarding Chester. Seems Mary was not his first wife, but his second wife. They did not know this yet. His first wife divorced him early on because she claimed he forced her to have sex with him multiple times a day.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Scratch your head, right? Mm-hmm. Not only that, but a document was found from when Chester was about 18 years old. It seems that his mother had him committed to a hospital, a mental institution, if you will, and she had the courts deem him legally incompetent at age 18. I couldn't really find out why Chester was determined to be legally incompetent, which means basically under the law, he would be considered insane, and that means he cannot own property, all right? Because at that time, if you were deemed legally incompetent, you could not own property, which that is his livelihood, so that's going to be a problem. Thinking about this and his thing, I think probably his mom thought he was gay, or maybe she found him having a gay interaction with somebody. And so she thought because different time, he obviously is insane. And I'm thinking that's why that was, but I'm not really sure. All this real estate that they had bought and sold over the years, which seemed to have, been his and his dealings, right, was actually not in his name. Everything was in Mary's name. Mary and only Mary owned it all. If Chester divorced her, he lost it all. If she died, he got it all. And this was equal to about $5 million in today's market. Not chump change, right?
Right. No, it's
a lot. Mm-hmm. 3 weeks after the murder of Mary, on May 31st, Chester is formally charged in the murder of his wife, Mary. The trial begins in November 1960. And, this was a big one with all the things the tabloids love today, right? Still. I mean, it's got all the things that, the lust, the greed, the love affairs, the money gone bad, and blah, 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 blah. The prosecution would claim that Chester waited in the hospital bed for the shift change. When it was time, his driver would come and get him and drive him home, where he killed Mary by strangling her to death, and then he messed up the bedroom with hopes of making it look like a robbery. Chester would even knock a few pins out of the closet door to make it look like someone tried to get in and left a fingerprint behind when he did that. Hence his fingerprint. Mary's diamond flew out of her ring across the room during the struggle. Chester would then hurry back to the hospital, climb in bed, as if he had been there all night. That's what the prosecution is going with.
Okay.
Now, while the fingerprint can be easily explained, it is his house. There was one thing the defense didn't know yet, and perhaps Chester was also unaware of the small but important detail. You see, one of the employees of that house had a routine, and that routine was to clean Mary's room each and every Wednesday. Part of the cleaning routine was to wipe the closet door down from top to bottom. The day it was last cleaned was Wednesday, and Mary was killed that very night while Chester was in the hospital.
Oh.
So this all comes around.
Out. Who cleans their doors every...
Rich people, because they don't have anything else to do. If this was the case, how did Chester get his fingerprints on that door when he was not at home, but in the hospital? This, the prosecution would claim, proved that Chester murdered Mary.
I'd go for it.
Things aren't looking good for Chester, Jen. I mean, they're just not looking good.
It kind of went down since the hyena. Or the hernia.
It sure did. Things were looking, I'm going to say, kind of badly. That is, until his attorney, Charles Adam, took the floor. Mr. Adams reminded the jury that Chester was not a nice person. He was mean. He was snobby. He was arrogant. And you know what? He was gay. But he was not on trial for any of those things, but only one thing: murder. He added, yes, you found his fingerprint, the fingerprint of a man who lived in the house. The defense also stated that the nurse testified to giving him those heavy-duty painkillers and sleeping pills, and that his wound was so fresh from surgery at that point, it would be near impossible for Chester to have committed the murder. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returns with a verdict of not guilty.
I was going to say that would sway me too.
Author Richard J. Hutto tells this story in great detail in a book called A Peculiar Tribe of People, Murder and Madness in the State of Georgia. He explains that he believes that Chester hired two men, those were the two men that came to the hospital that night in May, to kill Mary in exchange for money. Jurors would later say that they believe that Chester was indeed involved in Mary's murder, but he was not on trial for involvement, but actually committing the act itself. And being that, they could not prove that he did commit the murder, so they acquitted him.
And that makes sense.
This was not the end of the story, Jen, or Chester's time in the courtroom. It seems when police were interviewing his chauffeur, Lewis, Lewis, who was married but having an affair with Jessie May, Lewis admitted that not only had he been around to see some of those love affairs that Chester had and all the guys that he shuffled in and out, but he too was a lover of Chester's.
Ooh.
So authorities now
That's
are
a twist. Yeah.
Right? Authorities are like, we got a new charge. Because you got to remember the time.
So Chester was taking him for rides, huh?
Authorities seeing this and thinking about the time we're talking about, authorities would now try and convict Chester on the charge of sodomy by using the testimony of Lewis, the chauffeur. Only after a few months in jail, the decision was reversed and Chester walked out of jail into his third marriage to Anna Olson. The couple, perhaps to get a fresh start, moved to Palm Beach, Florida. But sadly, Jen, it wasn't meant to be forever. On October 7th, 1963, Chester was inside his Palm Beach home when it exploded. Chester would suffer severe burns and would die in the hospital. No one was able to determine what caused the home to explode. Chester was just 59 years old. Chester's remains were brought back to Macon, where they reside in a mausoleum that does not have his name on it. So poor Chester couldn't get his name on anything, not even in death.
Wow. They never found out what caused his house to explode?
Nope.
That sounds kind of shady.
He was kind of a shady fella, Jen. Well, did you hear the story?
I did.
He's got to talk about a lot of balls in the air and elsewhere.
Yeah. He's juggling those balls, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's why it was so popular.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
You need to see a picture of him. He just looks so very harmless. I'm going to be honest. Little round glasses. It's a little black and white photo. I'll put it
like
up
Orville Redenbacher type?
Kind of, but like you can tell he's very slight. You can tell he's like a little guy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like he just looks like, I don't know, he just looks like,
Unassuming?
Yes, unassuming. Yeah. Who's to say who killed Mary? We don't know for sure, but
hired thugs.
Honestly, that's the only reasonable explanation, right?
Right.
Like, because he wouldn't get anything unless she died.
Right. And the fingerprint could have very well be that, or could have the maid missed that part.
Yep. And yeah, and I'd be like, if you're wiping down a door frame every Wednesday, Come on, you're bound to miss something, right?
If I'm doing it once a month, it'll be...
Once a month? I don't even do it once a year.
Really? No.
The door frames?
I don't think I've cleaned the door frames since I've lived in this house.
Okay, good.
Teasing.
I gotta be honest, me neither. I don't do it once a year either. I just thought it looked bad if I said I didn't. But you beat me to it. Well, anyway, that's the story. It's a doozy. That book's pretty good if you guys want to check it out.
What's the name of it again?
It is called, the last name of the author is Hutto, Hutto, and the name of the book is A Peculiar, which I love that word. That's one of my favorite words. A Peculiar Tribe of People, Murder and Madness in the State of Georgia.
Nice.
Yeah.
Peculiar.
So, I love that. It's one of my favorite words. I have a lot of favorite words, but that's
one
of
of
them.
A bit peculiar, so it's...
I know I am. Yeah, and we're also dorks.
Which I totally love. Mm-hmm.
I know. So that's it. That's all I got for you, Jen. It was, I like stories like this because, sometimes I have trouble with the unsolved ones because it just gnaws at me. But I like the old-timey stories too because times were different. Today, they would totally find out who killed her and it would all unfold. But, it'd
all be done over the internet. There'd be cell phone records.
So,
yeah. Very nice. I liked it. Yeah. Thank you.
Pretty good. Yep,
Very
that's
nice.
all I got. All right, Jen. I got to tell you, been watching anything good lately? I was just going to tell you this because I think it's kind of interesting.
No, the last thing I've been trying to catch up on, like reading fun, no-brainer books, like the 99-cent books that I can find on Amazon from a Kindle. Trying to stay away from the news because it's all awful and the world's burning and people are killing each other for no reason.
Totally agree. Can't handle it.
And TV, last thing I did is I finished all 10 seasons of Shameless within a week, which was fun. Love Shameless.
Me too.
And that's about it. What about you?
Well, school started, so that's a little stressful. It's a little weird, but part of it that I love is that I have 5 kids in class instead of 25 or 30. Part of it that I hate is because I only have 5 kids in class, I'm up there dancing my 90-minute lesson, making jokes, trying to make them laugh, and it's crickets.
Yeah.
They don't know me yet, but at the same time, it's just very awkward. Like, I'm using my best stuff on you people. Come on now. But they don't know each other, and they're not... It's very weird because they split the alphabet in half. So a lot of them are upset because, they have, say, a B last name, and all their friends are after the letter L or whatever.
That's exactly my daughter's. The youngest one, all of her friends are in the same part of the alphabet as she is. My oldest daughter, all of her friends are in the opposite.
I know. It's weird. Just weird times. But I will say, and I didn't quite know this, one of our listeners reached out to me and said, hey, have you heard about this case? And I'm not going to tell you right now because it has St. Louis ties, so I might do it later. I'll tell you later off air. But so then she put me into a podcast and I listened to it, and it's totally interesting.
Awesome.
But then I listened to this person's other podcast, and I didn't realize that the Bear Brook murders, the person that came up with the names of the unidentified bodies was a regular lady librarian who just mad researched and figured it out.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I didn't realize
Look at
it.
Patton Oswalt, Michelle McNamara. She was just a journalist and she researched, and not that she did not solve it, but she helped get everything narrowed down.
It's crazy,
and
right?
Back on track. So there's no reason why all of us here at OTCP, we can't do the same.
That's right. So that's your homework. That's where this all comes to. That's what we were going to say. No, I'm just kidding. Not really.
But you know what?
I was thinking,
to solve a murder to get back to listen next week.
Well, I was thinking like how cool that would be to know that you helped out a family that was, had no answers. But then the big chicken part of me was I would want to know that the killer was dead. But because that Bear Brook murder was opposite, right? They found the killer. They figured out who killed them, and he died in 2010, I think, but they still didn't know the people. And so, like, I'd be okay with that, but like to try to, get vengeance for somebody, I'm scared. I'm a scaredy cat. I would be afraid that person would come after me, like Michelle McNamara, knowing that the Golden State Killer was still out there. How did she not get spooked thinking that,
Nobody knew she was working on it, though. That's the thing.
Well, her circle of people did. And you don't know who it is, though. Could be the guy next door. That's my point. I'm a chicken.
True.
That's all. That's all I got for you. But anyway. So that was interesting. So, yeah, that's about it.
And also, just a quick call out. If anybody feels the need or the want or desire, a little bit bored of your life, all schools around the country are in need of substitutes. Go check in with your local school district and see what you can do to help teachers.
Nobody wants to be a substitute in school anytime. Let's add the pandemic in it. No thanks. I wouldn't want to be a sub.
No
way. But that's funny, Jen. That's good.
No,
yeah,
I'm just saying. I post that everywhere that I can on Twitter, on my own Twitter account. One of the school districts around here, the first week of school, they sent home about 30 teachers to be quarantined for 2 weeks.
Yep.
That's a lot, people, and there's not enough substitutes to cover it.
That's what's going to send us home, because my school district is adamant that we go, and they're falling to the sides left and right, and there's only so many. We have a sub shortage on a good year, so I don't know.
So if you are an able-bodied person and you are, the restrictions, I believe, are even being taken down.
In the state of Missouri, you used to have 2 years of college or 60 credits of college. You don't need that anymore. Check it out. So check out what's up in your
college
state.
Soon. So.
Probably don't even, at this point, need middle school. They're desperate.
So if you have spare time and you want to make a couple extra bucks and help out your community, become a substitute. Big political
TED Talk
stance right here.
Way to go, Jen. Jen's
Thanks.
TED Talk.
Yep.
We're glad to be back, seeming to get into the swing of things a little bit more. And but until next week, remember, lock your doors.
And keep passing by those open windows.
Oh, bye-bye.
Love ya.
Today's episode was researched and written by me, Cam. For more information about this episode, as well as all the sources I used, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by hosts Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico from We Talk of Dreams. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from October Pod VHS. Our True Crime Podcast is executive produced by Nico and Dick Bain. Make sure to like and subscribe to Our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter at Our True Crime Pod. You can email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. If you really like the show, make sure to check out our Patreon at Our True Crime Podcast. Our True Crime Podcast is an OTC production.
Exciting week. Cracked my tooth. Thought I was going to have to get a root canal, but even better, I had to get the sucker yanked out of my head, which is always fun.
Is it the one right in front? Because that would make me happy.
No, it's a molar. It's a molar. It seems that the amalgam or that little silver stuff, it's probably not as good for your teeth as they thought it was 40 years ago. So, yeah, good times.
Mercury?
Well, there's not mercury in it anymore, I don't think, is there?
There used to be mercury in it.
No, but I don't think when we were kids it still had mercury in it.
Maybe
but
there is, Jen.
Know.
That explains a lot about you.
No, it doesn't. My parents explain a lot about me. So
I just
kidding. Different things. Yeah. So anyway, you gotta...
Okie dokie. Here we go, Jen. Yep. Lifestyle in an immaculate house in a ritzy side. In a start that over. In a ritzy side. It should be on a ritzy side of East Macon, right? Yeah. Sorry. I put in.
On the risky. Yeah.
Risky side.
It's the risky side.
It's a risky side. Okay. Chester was in Macon Hospital as he had just had surgery on a hernia a few days earlier. And he was on the mend.
I'm sorry. I can't think of hernias without thinking about 16 Candles with Grandpa's hyena. Sorry.
Oh,
I just had to throw that in.
God.
You can scratch that. It just makes me laugh. Okay.
That's okay. Let's see. Did I get that out?
Because that's what I'll be thinking about the whole time you're talking about.
That's okay.
I mow lawn because Grandpa's hyena.
Lung, duck, dong.
Which is so racist. By the way, it's so racist now.
Oh, it
when
is
you
now.
watch it,
That would never fly,
cringy.
right?
The whole movie
that would never fly today.
Would never fly today.
I know, but Jake Ryan is so cute. I love him.
Oh my God,
I still
he's
love
so
him.
cute.
Cute.
Everybody needs a Jake Ryan.
They do. I'm still waiting for mine. Okay.
Some people are bougie. We're boozy.
Boozy. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. You know what? Because we're too poor to be bougie. Right? So we're just boozy.
Morals, not morels. We have morals.
Okay. Linkshire marks around her neck.
Ligature?
Yeah.
Did you say lyncher?
Yeah. Hold on. This is
he got one of them lectures.
He's got one of them lectures right around his neck, and I said, you know what? I know something happened to him bad. Woo! Woo! Okay.
It's a lecture.
Speaking of which, put this at the end because I haven't talked to Jen lately. So there's this kid at school, and Heron and I are walking around the other day, and he comes up and asks us, how are you doing? We're like, we're fine. He walks away, and we're like, what the hell? He had like these giant, it looked like rope scabs around his neck, 2 of them. And we're like, oh my God, do you think we're like, what? No, he is blind as a bat, was riding an ATV. His mom emailed us, was riding an ATV and, didn't have his glasses on, and clothesline got him in the neck.
You're
right?
kidding me.
Is that awful or what? And I mean, it's not a little mark.
He's okay.
Thank you. Not a little mark. I'm talking like 10 inches of a giant scab and then another one that's probably 5 inches underneath.
Rope burn for one, but he's lucky he didn't get his neck broken. I guess he wasn't going that quickly.
I was like, I've seen that. What is it? Final Destination. That's what I was thinking. Oh my, because they do that. Like these motorcycle drivers. Have you seen the movie? And then they hold the rope and takes them off. Okay, here we go. Sorry. Nico's going to be like, and I promised I'm going to make this fast. Okay, here we go. All right, put all that at the end, Nico, so we don't drive people crazy. Because we do.
We do. We're dorks. Did you see that review?
I love her. I love her. Or him. I think it's a her, right?
It said Ellie. Yeah. Sitting around with my dork friends.
We are dorky.
I love it. I'm
okay with that. I love that. Thank you. Me too.
Own it.
Whatever.
It made me laugh so hard. Loved it.
Focus right now.
Sorry.
My mind's
I screeched after I read it. I wailed, and my whole family came in and going, "What's wrong?" I go, "This is the best review." And I read it, and my husband started laughing. He agrees also.
It didn't take long for police to track down the apple of Chester's eye, but it did require a plane trip to New Jersey. Okay. As police, I didn't.
That's not very scandalous, but okay.
I know, but I didn't know if I said New Jersey.
New Jersey. No. Anybody but from New Jersey.
But is he mad enough for murder? This is a cheesy one. Sorry, you take that out, Nico, but it is kind of murder. It's true.